Hello friends, this is Grief speaking. Last week we started a whole new journey with the Body Horror Iceberg, and it only gets crazier from here. Today we're on Tier 2, and it's already so much bigger. I think this video is going to end up being like 2 times longer than the last one. You can just jump right into the berg if you want to. I promise I'm not going to be offended, but I do have a few things to cover. First of all, I want to shout out Dripcat, who made the iceberg. It's really one of the most well-organized icebergs that I've ever seen, and they've also been really helpful on this tier with some of the entries that I didn't know what I was looking for. So big shout out to them. Also, thanks to all the new subs and all the people leaving nice and informative comments. You guys are awesome. Now, last video I was going off the original iceberg post, and I didn't realize there was an updated version with even more entries. So to start this video off, I'm going to get all of the ones I missed on Tier 1 and then get right into Tier 2. I've been learning a lot of cool stuff doing this iceberg. I hope you're learning a lot of cool stuff watching it. I'm wearing a dumb mask. Let's just get right into it. A Clockwork Orange. This film is filled with violence, but one of the most iconic scenes is Alex having his eyes pulled open by a machine and forced to watch footage by doctors who are trying to cure him from evil behavior. Donkey transformations, Pinocchio. This is referring to the scene in Pinocchio when he and another troublemaker, Lampwick, begin to transform into donkeys. Emperor Palpatine's clone. Exactly what it sounds like, this is referring to one of Palpatine's clone attempts and its deformed body. H.R. Giger. Giger is a Swiss surrealist artist whose art usually focuses on taking the form of the human body and blending it with machines in a weird organic metal hybrid. Also, the dude helped design the Alien and Aliens, so cool. Outlast. Outlast is a horror video game following a journalist who sneaks into a psychiatric hospital that's been overrun by the patients. The deformed bodies of some of the patients is even more disturbing because a lot of the game is seen through the player's night vision camcorder. The Evil Dead. This one kind of goes without saying. Evil Dead is one of the most iconic horror films of all time about a group of young people who stay in a cabin in the woods and accidentally summon an evil presence. The deadite possession of the human bodies, plus the disgusting stop-motion corpse disintegration, are at the top of the horror food chain. The Human Centipede. Another obvious one, the Human Centipede is about an evil German scientist who kidnaps 3 tourists and surgically attaches them ass to mouth to form a human centipede. The Powerpuff Girls. The Powerpuff Girls has some surprisingly dark episodes. Since the girls were created in a lab by the professor, this kind of makes way for some body horror. Like an episode where the professor's old college roommate mass produces knockoff Powerpuff Girls that all have weird deformities. Or when the girls themselves try to make a 4th sister and end up making a monstrosity. The X-Files. Man, I don't even know where to start with the X-Files, but 2 of the most disturbing examples off the bat are the Fluke Men, which is a creature byproduct of radiation, and at this point is just an iconic image, and an episode which features a man who can regrow limbs. Undertale. Undertale is the beloved indie game featuring a human falling below the earth into a realm of monsters, and along the way he meets all kinds of disturbing humanoid characters. One particularly creepy character is Flowey, who transforms into the monstrosity Omega Flowey. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. This could be referring to the Oompa Loompas, but mostly Violet eating the 3-course meal gum and turning into a giant blueberry. Okay, so that's all the Tier 1 add-ons, let's just get straight to Tier 2. Real Monsters. Real Monsters is a kind of bizarre cartoon from the 90s following 3 young monsters as they learn to become scary. The whole show is really body horror as the monsters take strange humanoid forms, but Crumb always particularly skeeved me out. All Tomorrows. All Tomorrows, a billion-year chronicle of the myriad species and mixed fortunes of man, is a 2006 work of speculative evolution written and illustrated by Turkish artist C.M. Kozman. It explores a hypothetical future path of human evolution set from the near future to a billion years from the present. It's an interesting science fiction book, and the illustrations are definitely creepy, especially since some of the future human species don't just evolve through natural means, but through genetic engineering, conducted by both humans themselves and by a mysterious and superior alien species called the Q. Angels of Paradiso, Bayonetta. These angels, which serve as antagonists in the Bayonetta series, have usually distorted humanoid bodies. Animal Man. Animal Man is a DC hero with the power to mimic the abilities of animals. On occasion, he'll actually change his physical form to exhibit these. Animation memes. This is referring to creepy horror animation memes that pop up all over YouTube. Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Aqua Teen is centered around 3 living fast food items, so you already have some body horror there, but then add on several disturbing episodes, like one where in an attempt to get a girl he's stalking, Frylock melts her boyfriend in public. The guy attempts to put his corpse back together and tapes his brain on top of it. Jeez. There's also several episodes where characters are disfigured in different ways, like when a broadcast signal causes people's noses to bleed and heads to swell up, and when Carl puts on an alien-infected clown wig that starts mutating his body to look like a clown. Batman Beyond. There's actually several disturbing things in Batman Beyond, like when Bane's caretaker starts making venom batches that he eventually gets thrown into and bulges out in an unsettling way. Battle for Dream Island. This is a web series about a bunch of anthropomorphic objects competing to win an island. The show features a lot of death and hints at the characters having human anatomy. Bendy and the Ink Machine. This is an indie game where you play as a retired animator who is invited back to his old studio by letter. When he gets there, he finds that the place is saturated with paranormal activity, including demons in the form of twisted cartoon characters. I feel like I gotta play this one, it sounds cool. BioShock. I mean, what can I say about BioShock? It's one of the best FPS games of the 2000s and has probably the most original world design as well. But enough gushing, the game has all kinds of twisted body horror, but the most obvious is the splicers, who are mentally and physically deformed by overusing Adam, which is a chemical substance that rewrites DNA. If that's not bad enough, some of the splicers' distorted faces are due to a plastic surgeon that went completely insane and started fucking up people's faces as if it was Picasso-like art. Brothers Grimm Fairy Tales. I've actually been planning on doing a full video on Grimm's Fairy Tales because they're way more crazy than I originally thought. As far as the body horror, probably one of the best examples is the original Cinderella story where, in order to fit their feet into the slipper, the evil stepsisters cut off part of their feet, like a toe or a heel, which actually fools the dumbass prince for a little bit until he sees the blood. Bugsnax. Bugsnax is a cute and fun pet collection kind of game like Pokemon, except for the fact that the inhabitants of this island can morph their body by eating these creatures. It's really weird when you first help a villager turn his limbs into food items, like, what the hell? Cabin Fever. This is an Eli Roth movie, so it's got a ton of violence, gore, and murder. But it's basically about college friends who get a cabin in the woods and end up contracting a virus that starts to cause their bodies to rot. Gross. Candle Cove. This is a creepypasta about a group of people online who all claim to have watched the same children's show as kids and can't seem to find the show anywhere. The creepy part comes in when they recount some horrifying episodes and characters, like a skeleton named Skin Taker, for instance, who would take skin from children and wear it. Carrion. Carrion is a game where you play as a tentacle monster escaping a facility and killing everything along the way. Chowder. Chowder is another kids cartoon that features all kinds of brutal body horror moments, like Chowder having a really gross lamprey mouth, which is a thing I didn't know how to name till this very moment, but just look it up. Or don't. I mean, I don't blame you. Coraline. Coraline showed up in my creepy stop motion video, and for good reason. It's about a girl who enters an alternate reality and her parents are here, but they're all weird. Everything about them is disturbing, but particularly the way they move and their button eyes, which the mom in this world is trying to sew onto Coraline, so there's that. Danny Phantom. The fact that Danny is half ghost is probably enough, but there are a number of weird scenes in this show, including Bertrand transforming in this particularly freaky scene. David Firth. David Firth is a surreal animator and creator of Salad Fingers, although basically everything he does is disturbing in some way. I'd recommend watching Cream or the Sock series. Deceased. This is basically DC's version of Marvel Zombies, where the undead take over the world and the DC heroes have to stop them. Dead Space. One of the best horror games ever made in my opinion, Dead Space features brutal body-altered undead. The most disturbing to me was always the fetuses that attack you, but then you just curb stomp those little shits. DeviantArt. This one's self-explanatory, just go to the body horror tag in DeviantArt and have nightmares. Doki Doki Literature Club. This is a psychological horror game disguised as a dating sim. There's a lot to talk about with this one because of the genius way the game progresses, but as far as the body horror goes, there's a scene where you're forced to watch a character's corpse slowly decompose over a weekend, so yeah. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared was one of the first weird horror videos I remember going viral back in the day, and still holds up along with its sequels as very disturbing. Edward Scissorhands. Edward Scissorhands is a Tim Burton movie about a humanoid in the form of a teenage boy who is created by a scientist. The scientist dies before completing him, however, leaving him unfinished, which results in him having to replace his hands with scissors. Elden Ring Grafting. Elden Ring, like Bloodborne, embraces body horror with many of the enemies being grotesque abominations, but I believe this entry is referring to Godric the Grafted, a demigod and boss in Elden Ring, whose creepy body has arms grafted all over it. When players get his health down to half, Godric will graft a dragon's head in place of his own arm. Elsagate. I never would have guessed this would show up on the list, oh boy. But I get it, because when the Elsa Gate craziness was in full swing, the videos often featured really disturbing stuff, such as Elsa cutting off her own tongue. Emil Antonowski's death, Robocop. Emil is one of the villainous gang members in Robocop and meets his demise when accidentally driving into a toxic waste container, which melts and deforms his body in one of the most jarring 80s special effects I've ever seen. Eraserhead. This is one of the weirdest movies ever made, and so it's no surprise it made the list, probably because of this freaky baby creature. Event Horizon. One of the unsung sci-fi horrors of the 90s, the premise of Event Horizon is that a spaceship opens up a portal to hell in space. It's a particularly brutal movie with all kinds of disturbing bodily harm happening to, well, everyone. Fallout: The Master. The Master of Super Mutants, or The Master, is a mutant character in Fallout. He was a normal human before falling into a vat of toxic waste, which horrifically transformed him into this thing. Ugh. Friday Night Funkin' mods. Friday Night Funkin' is a rhythm game, and I guess there's mods for it where the characters' bodies are brutalized or mutilated, or maybe I'm wrong. I mean, what the hell? Get Out. It's almost impossible to talk about this one without spoilers, but brain swap, I'll just say that. Gorefield. Gorefield is a horror version of Garfield originating from the I'm Sorry John Reddit page, and often takes highly disturbing shapes in order to stalk his victims. Gumball tampers with his DNA. In The Amazing World of Gumball, there's a disturbing scene where Gumball starts messing with his own DNA, which alters his body in various ways, and inevitably he becomes a masked, deformed being. Hannibal. I mean, it's a show about Hannibal Lecter, what do you expect? Anyway, there's a bunch of human artwork. Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters. This was a dark take on Hansel and Gretel, where they grow up to become witch hunters, and apparently there is a ton of brutal witch deaths. Also, I guess a man gets his arms and legs ripped off by ropes. Happy Tree Friends. Happy Tree Friends is a web series where cute, fuzzy forest critters murder and mutilate each other in various ways. Has Been Hotel. Another animated web series, Has Been Hotel follows a demon as she attempts to rehabilitate people in hell as a way to avoid the annual purge, where angels come down and kill everybody. Needless to say, it's full of disturbing characters and creatures. Hellraiser. Let's ignore the Hulu remake for now and talk about the original film. Also, I know a lot of these entries came from books or they have other forms of media, but I'm going off the iceberg, which is color-coded, so for instance, Hellraiser is purple, labeling it as a film. Just wanted to clear that up. Anyway, the film is a bit complicated, but essentially there's a puzzle box that's said to open the gateway to a world of pleasure. This is actually hell, where creatures known as Cenobites, which all are their own examples of body horror, torture people. This isn't a great summary, but you get the idea. Plus, I'd like to do a full explanation video on the Hellraiser series the same way I did with Chucky. Hotline Miami Hallucinations. This is in reference to the final level of Hotline Miami 2 titled Apocalypse, where the character is overdosing on drugs and hallucinates demons. Inscription. Inscription is a horror card-based game with a spooky atmosphere and creepy-looking competitors. However, a lot of the body horror comes from the fact that you can choose to self-mutilate yourself in order to gain an advantage. For instance, you can poke your own eye out. After the match, you can then choose which eyeball you want to have as a replacement. Inside Jabu Jabu's belly. This is referring to the part of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time where Link must enter the belly of a great whale in order to rescue the Zora princess and remove the evil inside. Invader Zim. Zim has a lot of just weird body stuff like skin suits, but the darkest episode is probably the Halloween special of Spooky Doom, which features the Nightmare Realm with creatures of twisted and deformed body shapes. Invincible. The popular animated superhero show takes some really dark turns and is just chock full of brutal kills. Basically, imagine if you saw Superman just ragefully killing people in absolutely devastating ways. Jason Goes to Hell. Jason Goes to Hell is one of the strangest of the Friday the 13th series. The film opens with Jason being blown up by the military and then coming back from hell as a parasite that possesses people's bodies and uses them to kill. Jeff the Killer. Jeff the Killer is one of the most iconic creepypastas of all time about a teen who's set on fire by bullies, which disfigures his face and drives him mad, so then he starts killing people. Jolanda Transforms. I think this is referring to Valkyrie profile Lyneth, when Princess Jolanda is unknowingly given a ghoul powder which transforms her into a ghoul, and despite the outdated graphics, or maybe because of them, this scene is still really creepy. Jenova, Final Fantasy VII. Jenova is an extraterrestrial life form that lands on the planet. It takes many forms throughout the game, usually with twisted humanoid biology, but there's always this classic blue image of her that I remember. Junji Ito. Junji Ito is probably one of the most well-known manga horror writers and is probably one of the best horror writers of this generation, period. His work includes a plethora of body horror from Uzumaki, which features students turning into slugs, to The Hanging Balloons, which has people being killed by giant versions of their own heads. Yeah, he's weird and great. Large Marge. Large Marge is a character from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I actually mentioned her way back in my creepy stop motion video, but basically she's a ghost, and after picking up Pee-wee as a hitchhiker, she transforms her face to scare the shit out of him, along with thousands of kids who watch this movie. Little Nightmares. Little Nightmares might be my favorite indie title of the last decade because it has such a unique style to it. The setting feels like a mix of Tim Burton and Hayao Miyazaki, but the real art comes in the character designs. Each section of the game has you go up against a new boss, which is almost always a nightmarish, deformed humanoid. Lumpy Touch. Lumpy Touch is a YouTube animator who uses pixel art to make really disturbing and funny animations that almost always feature horror versions of pop culture characters like Garfield or Walter White. Man After Man. This is similar to All Tomorrows in the fact that it's a book on speculative evolution. Once again, taking a stab at what weird evolutionary forms we might take with some creepy results. Manhunt. Manhunt is a messed up game that actually rewards you the more brutal your kills are. Besides all the violent murders, there's a boss named Pigsy who is a deranged psychopath that wears a pig's head and chases you with a chainsaw. I've never played the game, but I really have to because it seems like a horror fan's treat. Marvel Zombies. Zombies infect the Marvel Universe starting with the Avengers, and soon super beings begin to eat the entire world population. There's a ton of violent battles, like when a living Magneto uses Zombie Cap's shield to cut part of his head off. The thing that's most disturbing about Marvel Zombies is that once they fed on flesh, they gain back their sanity for a short period of time and have to lament over what they've done. Peter Parker ate Aunt May, for instance. Also, their bodies are decaying, and when Hulk is done feeding, he turns back into Banner, but his stomach is too small, so the body parts that Hulk ate tear out of his stomach. It's disgusting, man. Meatcanyon. Meatcanyon is probably one of my favorite current YouTube animators. He's known for his brutal caricatures and parody. These are often well-known characters from kids shows or more lighthearted media, except he always puts a dark twist turning them into killers, demons, or otherwise freaky-ass creatures. Honestly, it's A+ content. Midsommar. Another one that I don't want to spoil, but there are just some really disturbing scenes in this movie involving ritualistic murder. Old. The premise of Old is that a family vacations on an island but suddenly begin to rapidly age, which is highly disturbing. Over the Garden Wall. Over the Garden Wall follows two half-brothers as they travel through a forest to find their way home, all the while being chased by Eldritch-style horror creatures. Pamtree. Pamtree is one of those weird 3D animation YouTube channels that makes videos with popular children's show characters, except that they're always distorted and doing disturbing stuff. You know, that kind of channel. Pan's Labyrinth. Pan's Labyrinth is about a girl during the Spanish Revolution who crosses between the real world and the underworld, interacting with different creatures, some of who are absolute nightmare fuel. Phineas and Ferb. Like a lot of the other cartoons on this list, Phineas and Ferb has its moments of light body horror, like when Candace accidentally melts herself down into a liquid, which a bird thrashes around in, splitting her into multiple forms. Photoshop disasters. It's exactly how it sounds, disturbing Photoshop fails that make it look like people in the photos are missing limbs, have extra limbs, or are otherwise disfigured. Pibby. Pibby is a proof of concept short that ran on Adult Swim. It starts as just an educational children's show until a strange black liquid consumes the world. Later, Pibby discovers other worlds which are actually other TV shows that are being consumed by the liquid, turning iconic cartoons into nightmares. This is a movie about a family being haunted by ghosts, and all kinds of crazy shit happens in this movie. As far as body horror goes, there's a scene where a man starts tearing his face off in a crazy hallucination, and the chunks of his face build up in the sink. It's really gross. Possessor. Possessor is a 2020 psychological thriller about a company that uses brain implants to use people's bodies in order to assassinate targets. Postal 1/Redux load screens. These loading screens often feature mutilated or disfigured humans, and they're just really creepy. Postal Brain Damaged. Brain Damage, the retro shooter take on the Postal series, all takes place in the dude's damaged brain. This leads to some off-putting enemy types. Pringles Funny Boy commercial. The Pringles Funny Boy commercial, also known as the couch commercial, features a little boy and his sister goofing off with Pringles. The only thing is, their heads are a strange stop-motion CGI effect, and it's really unsettling. Project Graham. Project Graham is one of the strangest PSAs ever. It's all under the premise that our bodies are not designed to survive car crashes. But what if they were? An artist designed what someone might look like who did evolve to withstand car wrecks, and the results are, ugh. I went into depth on this in my disturbing PSA video if you want to check that out. Reanimator. One of my favorite 80s horror movies for sure. Reanimator is about a college student, Herbert West, who manages to take a serum to bring the dead to life, starting with a cat. It's typical zombie stuff, although we can't forget that classic zombie head with bat wing scene. Robot Chicken. As you can tell by this list already, stop motion really lends itself to body horror, and so it's no surprise despite being a comedy show that Robot Chicken pulls off some disturbing stuff. One good example is a bit where Helga from Hey Arnold completes her Arnold shrine by cutting off his head and wearing it like a mask. Ruins. I believe this is referring to the novel about tourists who end up trapped on a vine-covered hill. If they leave the hill, tribe members will kill them, but the vines on the hill are acidic and feed on flesh. As they try to survive, the group takes major bodily harm in various ways, including one person's leg being eaten down to the bone by the vines. Salad Fingers. Salad Fingers is David Firth's most popular series and is one of the earliest of this kind of comedy horror on YouTube. There's too much body horror to count, but one of my favorites is when he makes himself a little brother by sewing flesh onto a doll. Samurai Jack. In the Jack Tales episode, Jack encounters a seemingly human family who turn out to be metal-eating robots. The robots, in a fit of hunger, rip each other to shreds, and the insides of the robots look like human flesh. Saw. This one's obvious, but the Saw movies are all based around people having to mutilate their own bodies in order to survive. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This is probably referring to the scene in the movie where a character starts turning into a scarecrow, which is really cool. SCP Foundation. The SCP Foundation is a whole bag of worms. If you don't know what it is, just go to the website and start exploring, but there are multiple SCPs with disturbing body horror elements. Shrek's Baby Nightmare. This is referring to a scene in Shrek the Third where Shrek has a nightmare that dozens of babies start attacking him. It's just really creepy. Slenderman. Slenderman's distorted body is part of what makes him so disturbing. Species. Species follows a human-alien hybrid attempting to mate with more humans and often killing them in a brutal fashion. She looks human but sometimes turns into her alien form, which is pretty ugly. Steven Universe and Future. Steven Universe, like a lot of these other shows, features several strange abominations. Teeth for Two, Cat Dog. In this episode, Cat Dog realizes at a dentist appointment that whatever one of them does to their teeth affects the other. So Cat tries to make sure Dog's teeth stay clean, and I'm pretty sure this made the list because of one particular scene. Cat attempts to brush Dog's teeth while he's sleeping, and when he can't manage to do it normally, he turns himself inside out so that he can crawl from inside of their body out of Dog's mouth, and holy shit, that's disturbing. Blob. The 1988 Blob in particular has some really creepy body horror stuff thanks to the practical effects used when someone's consumed by the blob, like the phone booth scene for instance. The Cabin in the Woods. This is a really cool take on a horror movie, and I won't spoil much, but there are a lot of kills and some really disturbing creatures as well. The Cuphead Show. The fact that the characters are living cups, I guess? The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. Out of all the kids shows on this list, this might be the most chock full of creepy stuff. One scene that stands out to me is when there's this creepy stop motion character out of nowhere. It's a 2D show, and that just always looks freaky. The Psychiatrist Transformation, Katana Zero. Katana Zero is a stylish action platformer indie game. In the game, the psychiatrist assigns missions to Zero. However, if you take every opportunity to make him angry, you can unlock a hidden boss fight with him. Once you've damaged him enough, he transforms into, well, basically a lump of flesh with multiple eyes and little fetuses crawling out of him. Not to mention his syringe tentacle. The Residents music videos. This is a series of bizarre artistic music videos that I would not watch late at night. Most of the videos feature deformed humanoids or monsters, and everything is just off in really weird ways. This one's just hard to explain. I suggest you just go watch it on YouTube. There's a whole playlist. The Spectacular Spider-Man, Connor Turns into the Lizard. This one speaks for itself, but Connor turning into a lizard in this series is particularly more unsettling than some of the other cartoon adaptations. The Wattersons turn into model citizens. This is referring to an episode of The Amazing World of Gumball where the Watterson family transforms into picturesque looking humans through a brutally disturbing process. Thunder's Death, Big Trouble in Little China. Thunder is essentially a mini-boss in Big Trouble in Little China who, through some strange technique, blows himself up. His body takes a puffed-up form that's both comical and off-putting. Torchwood, Miracle Day. In this Torchwood series, everyone in the world suddenly can't die. In one particularly creepy scene, they show a corpse of a man that was basically at the center of an explosion. His body is completely mutilated, and yet he seems to be alive. They then cut off his head to see what will happen, and sure enough, his eyes still open. Trevor Henderson. Trevor Henderson is an artist who makes his art look like found footage with distorted creatures in them. I would recommend looking into all of his stuff because it's really cool. Ultra Kill. Ultra Kill is a shooter where you play as a robot that's fuel source is blood. Problem is, humans have been wiped out, so the next logical step is to descend into hell, of course. It being hell, there are all kinds of messed up enemies. Unikitty. In one episode of Unikitty, Hawkadile is turned into a freak with the transformation and all that. Username 666. Username 666 is a video pasta that basically takes you down the unfortunate rabbit hole of someone searching the username 666 on YouTube. As a user goes deeper into this channel, more and more disturbing imagery appears, often of humanoid beings. Venom. Since Venom is a symbiote, it requires a living host to survive. In Venom's case, he's latched on to Eddie Brock, which is body horror enough to work for this list. Weird Al Yankovic, Fat. This is obviously a parody of Michael Jackson's mega hit, although in this music video, Weird Al transforms into an extremely obese person, and the fat suit and makeup definitely makes me uncomfortable. What If? What If features a few disturbing sequences, but this is probably referring to the Zombies episode or Doctor Strange turning evil. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? There's an iconic scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit where it's revealed that the main bad guy, Judge Doom, is actually a toon, and the transformation scene is just pure nightmare fuel, especially since it starts off with him being smashed by a steamroller. Yume Nikki. Okay, and last but not least, Yume Nikki is a freeware game that released in 2004 and follows a girl exploring her dreams. The thing is, there are extremely disturbing characters in these dreams. Okay, so that's it. That's tier 2, way more entries, and I think the next tier has even more entries. So yeah, this thing's just gonna get crazier and more obscure, and I'm really excited about it because I've already been finding some like really bizarre body horror that I didn't even know existed. So these videos are pretty hard to put together. I'm not trying to complain or anything like that. It's just I only have a limited amount of time each week to put them together. The next couple tiers, there is a possibility I might have to split them into 2 videos only because I'm just limited on time. I'm going to try to get them all in one video if that's possible, but each one's going to be chock full of cool content, so I mean either way it's going to be interesting videos, I hope. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to keep up to date with the videos as they come out. I'm thinking this series will probably last till the end of October, but I'm not exactly sure. Also, I think I've mentioned this before, but if you like the music that I use in the intros and outros, those are songs by Kill Me Katie, which is a really cool musical artist who they just make really interesting music that I think fits the vibe of my channel, so go check them out. I'll leave links below if you want to check them out. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say for now. Thanks for all the new subs. Thanks everyone for watching. I want to see where it goes from here. But as always, this is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.